So thank you once again for joining us. This is the third of our renewable energy series. This is a series that focuses on small scale and embedded renewable energy generation, which has a big focus on solar. The first seminar, we looked at the household sector and the products that are being offered mainly to the upper and the higher and upper middle income consumers, the penetration of those services into the bond market, the new solar tax and the bounce back scheme. Last week, we had a fascinating seminar on community grids, mini grids, microgrids, and picogrids, and just the context that we have in Southern Africa, our population distribution, the size of our country, and one of the take homes from that seminar was how it's almost a no-brainer to have these not massive centralized transmission systems. And today we are turning to schools, which is a more focused kind of seminar. I'm really looking forward to the seminar. I'm also looking forward to the fact that we've got only 2 speakers, because our seminars previously have been very full and we've struggled to get in all the information. But today we'll have more time for engagement with the participants. So I'm really looking forward to that. This is covering basic education. We're not looking at the tertiary education sector here. I will say that University South Africa recently did a seminar on the leading universities, which is mainly University of the Free State, that be doing amazing things, and Nelson Mandela University down in the Eastern Cape. Let's take notice. But we today focusing on schools, on primary and high school education. And I'm very pleased to welcome 2 speakers. The first is actually with me in my office today, Misha Blesher, who is moving to Cape Town tomorrow. And Misha has absolutely no furniture in his flats. And so has come through to my office today to sit with me here today, which is great. Misha is a renewable energy professional with 7 years experience. The first 4 of these were spent building a large South African-based pipeline of utility-scale wind, solar, and green hydrogen projects for a multinational energy company. And then the last 3 have been at Sun Exchange as a solar business developer, working on projects in commercial, industrial, agricultural, and education sector. And Misha has a master's in city planning from UCT. And then our other speaker is Danielle Tucker, who is a veteran educator. Danielle is from, she's deputy principal at Protea Heights Academy. She has 10 years experience there. Danielle, I don't know if you just want to turn on your camera so people can see what you look like. Hi, Danielle. Thank you for joining us today. Her commitment to education shines through her teaching philosophy. She places special emphasis on their ability to think independently. She is a physical science teacher. She's won a number of awards. She was awarded the Provincial National Teacher Award for Excellence in Teaching Natural Science, and then runner-up for the National Teaching Award, recognized for her excellence in teaching physical science. But she'll be speaking today on her role as deputy principal at a school which has found a renewable energy solution. So thank you for that, Danielle. You can turn your camera off now. Thank you. As always, I just want to give a vote of thanks, firstly, to Magda Jansen van Noordwijk, who has helped me put these seminars together. Magda is actually on leave today, but I knew that she would be here. So thank you, Magda. You are a star. And then her assistant, Reason Sabia, who has put also a lot of effort into helping us run these seminars. And then to the funder of my chair, the Claude Leon Foundation, which enables me to do this cool work. So in introducing the topic today, which is renewable energy and schools, you may have heard of the judgment handed down in the case of United Democratic Movement versus Eskom Holdings. It was handed down on the 5th of May, 2023. And one of the findings of that decision was that load shedding impacts the right to education. And I don't think we've heard sort of generally how load shedding has impacted the economy, but we haven't really heard enough about the impact of this on learners and teachers and the schooling system in general. One of the order of that court was that the Minister of Public Enterprises had to take all reasonable steps within 60 days of the order, in conjunction with other organs of state, to ensure that there will be a sufficient supply or generation of electricity to prevent any interruption of supply as a result of load shedding at all public schools, as defined in the South African Schools Act 84 of 1996. So that was the order. Being a person who's worked in the law for many years, I have grave doubts about the implementability of that order. And so I have become aware of how schools are finding solutions for themselves. And when we're talking about the school sector, we are, of course, talking about quite a varied landscape, public and private. And then in the privates, there are the Crawfords, but there are also many private and independent schools that serve lower middle income and low income households as well. So it's a very varied landscape. So in the seminar, we're trying to understand how load shedding has impacted the learning enterprise and how some schools have been finding solutions for themselves. And these include navigating hurdles like, if you're talking about school governance, the term of office of a school governing body, because if you're talking about buying a power purchase agreement of 20 years, that long exceeds the term of office of an SGB. We have to think about property relations because schools are situated sometimes on state property, sometimes on private property. In many of these schools that are 100 years old, you have heritage concerns, or you have that the buildings wouldn't necessarily support the structures that are required for renewable energy. So how have you found your way around? How have schools found their way around this? You have the role of the provincial departments of education and how they are grappling with this new reality of schools trying to find their own energy security solutions. You have the financing angle, how the deal is structured and who's actually contributing to it, and how this ties into also a network of old learners at some school. And then you have how the risk is divided between the power purchase agreements, the power purchase providers, and then the schools themselves, and how they've navigated that landscape. So I'm done. I'm going to hand over to Misha, who's much more of an expert in this area, and he's going to be taking you through the solutions that Sun Exchange has been able to work out with some schools. So thank you, Misha. Over to you.
Thanks, Tracy, and thank you, colleagues. Tracy, I think you have to mute on your end. So maybe just put the volume off on your laptop. Good. Okay, sorry about that. Tracy has allowed me to squat in our office today because, as she mentioned, I'm in the process of moving back to Cape Town. It's my home, so I don't know if it technically counts as immigration, and I do love Joburg. So as Tracy mentioned, I work for the Sun Exchange. Magda, I think I'm able to share on my side, so I'm going to share my presentation now. Please let me know when everyone can see this. Okay. Are you seeing the presentation? Nice. Okay, fantastic. So as mentioned, I work for a company called the Sun Exchange, and the Sun Exchange is a fascinating organization, and I'm going to get into a bit about that. But the Sun Exchange specializes in solar powering schools and organizations in the education sector. So when Sun Exchange was started in 2014 by our founder, Abe Cambridge, we knew we wanted to crowdfund solar energy projects. I'm going to get into that. And the key challenge that we found, specifically when looking at schools, is that schools lack the capital and the access to affordable finance to secure clean energy. And this was, I mean, the challenge here was even before load shedding, but to save money and to become more sustainable. In today's terms, also mitigating load shedding is incredibly important. So finding an energy security solution. So as a school, if you're looking, to install a solar system, you have a number of options which I'll run through. But actually, you're almost always on the back foot unless you're a really wealthy school. You may not have the access to capital to procure a multi-million rand energy generation infrastructure. And even if you did have that kind of capital, is it actually best used by you taking on the risk of this infrastructure. So the challenge we kind of outlined was that schools aren't able to do this necessarily, and obviously there will always be schools that can, but that was the challenge that we looked to tackle. So Sun Exchange, as I mentioned, is a crowdfunding platform, and we've been joined by more than 40,000 individual cell owners around the world. And these are people, across society who, one, are married or committed to the idea of sustainability, i.e. they are looking to offset their carbon footprint, and they're looking to, help an organization like a school go solar powered. And two, they're also looking for a return. So they're looking for a financial incentive. And Sun Exchange kind of marries these two things. And our vision is for individuals and organizations to harness affordable clean energy and ensure a healthy climate for future generations. And our kind of tagline is connecting the world to the sun. So just in brief, so that everyone's up to speed, and I'm going to talk in very layman's terms, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pose them on the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the Q&A. But Sun Exchange, and if you want to procrastinate during this webinar, instead of scrolling Instagram, you could go to our website and check out what the Sun Exchange actually looks like. So the Sun Exchange is a solar leasing platform where we list projects which we develop. We list them on our platform, and you can see some of the projects there. And we allow anyone from anywhere, anywhere in the world, any country from, Korea to Eritrea to South Africa, to be able to purchase a solar cell. And now, what a solar cell is if you imagine a solar module, an actual, solar panel, as people call them, each module is made up of a number of cells. So Sun Exchange lists these cells for sale, and by buying the cell, you help a off-taker, a cell user, i.e. a school, finance their solar system. And you, as the cell owner, who actually now own this asset, this individual solar cell that's been installed on a school's roof, you then get a return for your investment. As the solar system produces energy, that energy or that revenue is distributed pro rata, determined by the amount of cells that you own in the project. So I started buying solar cells in Sun Exchange long before I worked at Sun Exchange, because I couldn't actually believe that this was real. And I think the first school I bought in was Rondebosch Boys High School down in Cape Town. It's down the road from my parents' house. And I thought, well, this makes sense. Let me give it a go. And this is really what Sun Exchange does. So we design projects. So I'll use the example here of a school we're working with currently, and I've just started the installation process on Pretoria Boys High. So we started there by designing the project. So we went through the full engineering scope of the project, looked at their energy bills, looked at the meter data, the energy data that we get from measuring the school, looked at the structural integrity of the roofs, the lightning risk assessment, and were able to design a project. We then funded this project through our platform, and now we're in the build stage. And then Sun Exchange, who partners with engineering companies to construct these projects, we then build the projects. And then Tracy mentioned it earlier, the power purchase agreement, which is what Sun Exchange really develops. We develop power purchase agreement solutions. We operate, maintain, monitor, and ensure the system for a 20-year period. So that's the 20-year PPA. I'm not going to get too much into this. If you want to ask me direct questions about the PPA, let's leave that towards the end. But it has certain advantages, which I will talk to. Just a little bit of background, where Sun Exchange has come from and where we are now. So we've completed 80 projects, which is really awesome. Of those 80 projects, around 150 million Rand has been crowdfunded. So I think it's the largest crowdfunding event on the African continent. So that's super, super cool. We've installed more than 12 megawatts, and we have, as I mentioned before, more than 47,000 individual cell buyers. Some of these people will only buy one cell. They just want to test it out. Some people will buy entire projects. And we are represented by more than 180 countries around the world. So in almost every single country or territory, there sits someone who has bought a Sun Exchange cell, which is truly remarkable. So why should schools care about solar? And this graph is really cuts to the core issue for schools. Okay, there are two two separate conversations here. They are married as well, but I want to talk about them separately. So the base case is that schools are cost-sensitive institutions, specifically government schools as well, where you don't necessarily have the funds to continually meet your bills. And energy bills in South Africa have increased year on year by 15% since 2007. And if we just give a bit of history here, so the South African economy was built on extremely cheap energy and obviously extremely cheap labor. And our energy tariffs have been artificially kept low for a long time. And what we've seen since 2007 is that NERSA, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, the body that basically works with Eskom and the Department of Energy to set tariffs, has said, look, guys, we aren't actually recouping the amount of revenue that is required for us to service the cost of generation. We need to increase our tariffs. And this year, NERSA has approved an 18.65% increase. So that is huge, and it's almost twice the inflation rate. Obviously, energy is a huge driver in inflation in the economy as well. But schools have seen their energy costs increase year on year by 15% over time. Municipalities, they then take the NERSA applied tariff increase and they adjust them slightly. So some municipalities adjust their tariff structures, in accordance with this, more or less varying. And it basically means that the cost base for schools has increased over time. And solar power today is now the cheapest energy at source. So in 2015, when Sun Exchange installed our first project at the Stellenbosch Waldorf School, we were able to go to that school to say, we will give you a solar system, install a solar system on your roof at zero capital cost, with zero, outlay, zero labor required on your end. All you have to do is pay an energy bill, which is guaranteed to be lower than your municipal energy rate. So the school would have no risk for the system. And they would then buy energy that they would be buying anyway to run their school, but at a discounted rate. So they'd make a saving from day one. So then this kind of thinking leads to the kind of term as no-brainer. And it really is. You're basically being offered clean energy at a discounted rate. Why not take it? And there's no risk attached to it. So many schools at this time, started to consider solar, and many people as well started to consider solar. Now we're in a different setting where there is, a massive energy crisis, and this shifts it slightly, and I'll talk a bit about that later. But it introduces the question of energy security, which basically means adding batteries to systems. The other reason why schools should care about solar, well, really, it's the right thing to do. South Africa is one of the largest polluters in the world. Eskom and Sasol are the 13th and 14th biggest polluters in the world, if I recall. And Secunda is the site of the single worst place for CO2 emissions on the planet. And I don't know if anyone here has been or has driven through Secunda, but it really is quite a sight. So schools, as centers of sustainability, it's where you're teaching people for the first time about what is good in the world and what is the direction that you should take. Is a brilliant place for you to champion this idea of sustainability. And what better way to do it than by using clean energy? So if you are a school and you are considering solar, you've got really three options. And it goes back to my previous point. But you can either buy the system outright, which means you have the capital available, and maybe you've got a donation, or you've been accruing this capital for a while for a special project, and you say, okay, great, we're going to buy a solar system. Fantastic. Your next option available to you would be to go to the bank and say, bank, we really want a solar system. Can we borrow this capital from you so that we can procure a solar system and get on with it? And the bank will say, sure, that's fantastic, but it's going to cost you X amount, the bank finance. And then the last option available to a school would be a power purchase agreement or an asset lease. And what the power purchase agreement allows the school to do is to say, yes, we want a solar solution, but we don't have to outlay any capital. So it means you don't take on any capital risk, and you're able to remove the risk of operating and maintaining, and in some cases, and it is the case of Sun Exchange, insuring the asset. So as a school, and when I talk to schools about this, I really lay these out on the table, because you have a variety of different things you need to speak about. If you have the capital available to yourself as a school, and you are technically savvy. I mean, you've got a good maintenance team, you've got people on the board, and you have people in your school that understand how to, manage kind of infrastructure projects. If you bought a system outright, looking over a 20-year period, and if you're able to operate, maintain, and be, really very, very committed to making sure the system worked properly, you would probably make the most savings over the 20-year period, right? But then you have to also ask yourself, could I not use this capital that I'm putting into a multi-million rand generation infrastructure? Could I not use this in my school to actually benefit learners in a different way? Could I not add electronic whiteboards to our classrooms? Could we not, offer more bursaries to kids in need and stuff like this? So you need to make this decision about, can the capital not be spent better elsewhere? And to be honest, in terms of a school, yes. I mean, I think every single time it could be. If you borrow money from a financial institution for a solar system, it means that your savings are reduced by the cost of capital over time, and sometimes, depending on your risk profile, the bank will give you a favorable or not so favorable loan. But critical here is that the performance of the system is not linked to your payments. So it doesn't matter if the system's working or not. It means you still have to continue servicing this loan, and that is a risk that no school should necessarily take on. And the last option, which for me and for most people actually makes the most sense for schools, is the power purchase agreement. And in this solution, the school takes on no risk. So Sun Exchange offers a fully wrapped solution. We come in, we work with the school to design a project that works. We fund the project. We then get a partnered engineering company that we've vetted to install the solution, which we oversee. And then we operate, maintain, monitor this facility over its life, and we insure it comprehensively. So what this means is that the asset doesn't sit on the school's books. It doesn't have to worry about, is my solar system producing properly? Is it working today? The school is simply paying for the energy that it consumes from the system, which means that the school is de-risked. Yes, the premium that the school pays is slightly higher than if it bought the system outright. But if I look at it, the 20-year life of a plant, the chances of something going wrong, if the inverter fails outside of its warranty period, if some of the panels get stolen and your insurance premium changes, there's so many things that go wrong. I mean, when I drive around Joburg and I look at some of the solar systems that have been installed, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I work with some off-takers who've had previous solar systems installed where they've never worked, not even from day one have they been commissioned properly. And I'm not saying that's going to happen if you buy a solar system. I mean, I think the market's learned a lot, and there's the quality has increased. But it's not worth, at least in my opinion, for a school to take on this risk for 20 years. Rather let an expert do this and let them run with it. You're still getting, the saving over the life of the project, and you're not taking on any risk. But as we'll see in the coming presentation, this actually poses a slightly tricky solution to the regulatory framework of the education, the government education sector, because how do you fit a PPA into kind of a 3-year SGB term, and how do you ask a school to take on something for 20 years? So this is a slide with a lot of information on it, and I'm not going to go into this now, but it talks to the traditional buying or borrowing model versus kind of the new thinking and innovation, which is the power purchase agreement. And I think one thing that is important is that the power purchase agreement allows a school to get a system that is suited for their needs, instead of them getting a system based on what they can actually afford at that moment in time. Because if you can only afford half of the solar system that you need at that moment in time with the capital or the loan that you can raise, it means that you probably have to then at another point add additional or buy more, which complicates it technically, and also creates additional financing headaches as you go on. Whereas here you have a system which is able to, a company like Sun Exchange, which is able to come in, give you the system you need, give you no risk, and just give you a rate that you pay. So Tracy, I think this is where I'm really going to get into the core of this presentation, is where Sun Exchange, our journey sits with the educational sector, and how we've managed to navigate across country working with local departments of education as well as municipalities to try and give schools the PPA product which is best suited to serve them. And I want to take just a step back and to think about this holistically from a kind of a full country view. So South Africa has thousands of schools, right? And if a national government wants thousands of schools across the country in various different financial, and geographic settings to procure their own solar systems, it's going to create numerous headaches over time, right? So you're adding a whole lot of risk to the conversation if you want thousands of schools to now address their energy needs, address the cost challenges of energy, and go solar. So the PPA really allows the national department and then filtering down provincial departments of education to give an opportunity for schools to go solar without putting any risk on those schools' balance sheets. And that really is, for me, the big opportunity that the PPA provides the national government and provincial departments of education. Because if you want, schools in lower income brackets to go solar, chances are they're going to face financing difficulties, or they will face theft difficulties. And you don't necessarily want to put these risks not only on low income schools but medium and high income schools. You don't want to put these risks onto these schools multiplied across country. You may find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. So in 2014 or 2015, when we approached the Western Cape Education Department, we said, guys, we want to offer a PPA agreement to the school, and we want to install the solar infrastructure onto a roof that is owned by the Department of Education or the Department of Public Works. What is the process for us to do this? And at the time we had, thanks Tracy, at the time we had a power purchase agreement in mind, but the Western Cape Education Department didn't necessarily like the idea of a power purchase agreement. The kind of the theme of an asset lease was more familiar to them. It kind of fit better into their framework of what they were used to. And so we sculpted our product to fit this. And we created an asset lease agreement for schools, which was very much like a PPA. They would still pay for the power that they consumed. And it allowed us to start rolling out our product to schools in the Western Cape. And the Western Cape Department of Education were particularly good in outlining a process for us. These are the documents required. Given the regulatory framework that you're working in, you need a resolution from the SGB, which needs, to have a minuted resolution. So you need to show the minutes of the meeting where the SGB said, yes, you can adopt, this 20-year lease, which contravenes the SGB term. We had to our so that it wasn't for 20 years, but it was for 9 years and 11 months, so under the 10-year long lease agreement threshold. And by doing this, the Western Cape Department of Education, allowed us to say, okay, you can now offer PPAs to schools, and the uptake was immediate. I mean, I think we've solar powered more than 20 schools in the Western Cape, many of them in and around Cape Town, and we'll hear from Danielle just now on Protea Heights Academy, where we have done a phase 1 and a phase 2, and it's been great working with a regulator that says, we understand that this makes sense. Here is the avenue you can go with. And we've tried to take the similar approach. We've tried to apply it to other provincial departments of education around the country, and for the most part, the response has been ad hoc. So whether it's the Free State, Mpumalanga, KZN, we've managed to get the provincial departments to say, yes, fine, we approve this project, but not necessarily with a process in mind. And I think the process is really important because it then also allows not only Sun Exchange, but other PPA providers to also understand how to provide these solutions for schools. Because, I mean, there are thousands of schools in this country. Sun Exchange can't service all of them, unfortunately. So the provincial departments of education have been great. Recently with GED, we've had some recent breakthroughs where there has been this kind of understanding that, yes, we need this, but it's very difficult for us to fit this into our process. And the conversation has been, okay, schools want this. These are the schools that want to go for a power purchase agreement. Can we fit this in? And eventually we've massaged it in. And it's been great working with GED, specifically the Department of Infrastructure in GED, who've seen the advantages here. And we now finally have a process kind of outlined, which we're testing now. And we're looking forward to, deploying more projects in Gauteng. Often the provincial departments of education also need buy-in from the Department of Public Works, local Department of Public Works, because they are often the ones that own the building. So they then, in the Western Cape specifically, have tailored their process to also include Department of Public Works, and I'm sure we'll see similar things coming in as we kind of mature these relationships with departments of education around the country. Then in municipalities, because one, you need approval from the Department of Education when you're working with schools, but you're also working in a municipality which has the small-scale embedded generation process, so the SSEG process, whereby the municipality needs to approve the project. And part of this is the municipality, coming to site, vetting that the project complies with the grid codes, and saying, yes, this generator has been installed correctly. So, I mean, I'm sure many people are aware that in the city of Cape Town, which is probably one of the furthest municipalities along, are now paying people a tariff for the energy that they produce. And the city of Cape Town has, a very strong SSEG process. Sun Exchange works across the country, so we've worked with municipalities where there was no SSEG process in place, and we've had to, with the municipality, assist them in kind of understanding how the generator will connect to the network, and getting them to give us the green light. Because Sun Exchange crowdfunds projects and we have thousands of investors in projects, we need to make sure that when we are building a project, every single legal or regulatory or technical box is ticked. Because we're building projects to last for 20 years, and if the Department of Education or a municipality comes to us 2 years after the project has been built and says, sorry, this is contravenes X, Y, and Z, you have to take it down, it means that we are hurting our cell owners and these people who are looking for their return. And our business is a reputational business where if you've purchased a solar cell and you're maybe expecting a 12% IRR, and the system is off for half the time, or the system has been paused for 6 months because we're fighting with a municipality, it means that your return is hurt and you won't buy more solar cells. So we want people to build their solar cell portfolios. So we make sure that we tick all these boxes. Well, it's not a box ticking exercise, but we accomplish all these goals, so we know we're building systems that are totally compliant and then will last for 20 years. And that's really important, because you see, a lot of your return towards the tail end of the project. Municipalities around the country are adopting SSEG processes, and it's really great to see, because if a municipality has an SSEG process in place, it means that for a developer like Sun Exchange, you can go to that municipality, develop projects, and feel safe knowing that your investment in that project is good, because you can actually take this project through the municipal rungs and get it approved. If you go to a municipality where there's no SSEG process, you just come up against walls over and over again, and this then slows down the process, and you think about the development capital, could it be used better elsewhere? So more municipalities in South Africa are taking up SSEG processes, and it's a really good sign, and it's a sign of a maturing energy environment and sector. Municipalities also have feed-in tariffs, so they're called FITs, and a lot of municipalities, including City Power and City of Tshwane, have feed-in tariffs in their municipal booklets, but they don't necessarily have the accounting or infrastructure to start crediting people on their bills. So what a feed-in tariff traditionally does is that a kilowatt hour that you export from the system, that the solar system generates, isn't used by the school and is sent into the network. You get credited for that kilowatt hour on your bill. Eskom, they credit on a kilowatt rate, so they don't give you, there's no cash amount. But municipalities, they usually will credit you around 60 or 70 cents for a kilowatt hour, where in Cape Town they'll pay you cash. So that's just a bit of working with municipalities, and kind of like what we have to navigate when we work through. Now, a big thing that Sun Exchange has had to grapple with is that, specifically with schools, and more than ever, because schools now are chartering a new course in e-education and bringing technologies into the classroom. Solar-only solutions were great, because we were able to offer energy saving from day one for schools, where we would come install a solar system and a grid-tied inverter, and that's basically an inverter that takes power from the solar system and reticulates around the school's network, and that grid-tied inverter gets a reference signal from the grid telling it what frequency to convert the DC current that's coming out of the solar system into AC current that then is used by the school. So for our solar-only solutions, it was great because we could come into a school, I could say, school, I'm going to offer you a solution, a PPA solution that puts no risk on your books, and you're only going to save money. Now, with load shedding, a solar system by itself won't work without a reference signal to the inverter to tell it what frequency to convert voltage at. So that reference signal, when it's not coming from the grid, can come from a generator, a diesel generator or petrol generator, or it can come from a battery. And so SunExchange, we've had to now change our product slightly to offer comprehensive load shedding solutions. And basically that then will allow the school to mitigate load shedding. So schools traditionally operate, from the hours of 7 to 3, 4. Those are their big hours. There are the bigger schools where hostels are involved and stuff like that, and more load shedding protection is needed at night. But for a school to get a solar system with a battery, the critical function of the battery is to keep the solar system on when there's load shedding, and then when the weather's bad, so when it's very cloudy and the solar system isn't producing properly or fully, the battery can then augment or supplement the energy that's required, allowing the school to continue with its operations through the day. And really, I've seen this now in most of the schools that I interact with today. Energy is becoming a critical resource for teaching. And what this means is that energy security is now more so than ever critically linked to the performance of learners. So load shedding or energy security solutions has become paramount. Schools need these things to teach learners. And often if the school has capitalized on a generator previously, or they're thinking about capitalizing on a generator, what they don't understand is that if you have a generator, so a diesel generator, and you're running that to produce energy, we're all addicted to energy. And if you have a generator and you don't want to use, chances are a parent or teacher or the school is going to say, well, we have this thing, let's just burn diesel, let's just operate. And before you know it, you've totally blown your budget, because diesel is really expensive. I think it's going up again next week. So looking at a long-term solution, a comprehensive load shedding solution that is going to see you through, hopefully not too long on load shedding in South Africa, is where SunExchange is now. So we now offer comprehensive load shedding solutions for schools, and these are solar and battery projects, which allow schools to no longer experience load shedding. What this does bring to our business model, though, is a complication, because crowdfunding is fantastic, but if you want to crowdfund a 8 million rand project, it becomes a bit difficult, because even though we have a lot of power in the crowd, if you have a project that sits on the platform for too long, it becomes very hard to keep prices fixed with engineering parties and stuff like that. So it becomes complicated. So we've now introduced institutional investors. So we now are able to fund projects with institutional funders as well as corporate partners. So we've had projects funded by cars.co.za. We've had a school project in Cape Town funded by ABSA, where they basically, we listed the project to ABSA employees to buy cells. ABSA bought the rest of the cells and then donated the earnings of that back to the school, which is fantastic. And we also have, sometimes private investors who will come and purchase a whole project because they are keen on renewable energy investments in their portfolio. And what's interesting here, and I talked about a bit just previously, is that private institutions are really quick to adapt. They understand what the problem is. They see the solution. They get a couple of consultants to come present their PPA solutions to them, their purchase solutions. They've got the technical expertise on board. They can select, okay, this company is reputable. They can give us the solution. Let's go. And 3-4 months down the line, they've got a working solution, and their learners are no longer affected by load shedding. And we're seeing this across the country with large private schools. I think the company that owns Redham just announced that they are taking their school solar as well. But the national conversation, it needs to be driven with urgency, because you can't allow the thousands of government schools across the country to be left pretty literally in the dark because they aren't able to access the financing solutions that can give them a load shedding solution that will allow them to continue to teach. And that's really the critical thing here, is that if we allow load shedding to continue as it is without mitigating its effect on schools, what is the effect on learners in 5-10 years time? If you lose 4 hours of your teaching a day, or if your classroom is basically debilitated, or really your potential is curbed because you're learning in the dark and none of your computers work, then what is the net effect of that over thousands of schools across South Africa? And I think that's where the national conversation needs to really be driven, to say, look, it's very tough for national government to roll out a solar program for all these schools. Is there a way that the private sector can step in and do this? What's the best solution to do that? In my opinion, it's the power purchase agreement. How that's structured and sculpted, can be debated, but for the most part, it allows schools to access energy security with zero risk and within an affordable range. So this is just a letter from the WCED, and it shows their early buy-in with power purchase agreements and with Sun Exchange. So this is from the old MEC for Education, Debbie Schaefer, where she basically says, in principle, the installation of solar panels and green initiatives, and these are the schools that have gone solar with Sun Exchange, and she's confident that Sun Exchange is a credible company to work with. So fantastic. But this just shows government, a provincial department understanding the power that a power purchase agreement offers to a school, and it shows directly that this is an incentive that should be used and rolled out. This is showing some GED buy-in. So this is a project we recently crowdfunded, Pretoria Boys High. It is actually quite a remarkable story, and I think our marketing team with Pretoria Boys are putting out a story today. So Pretoria Boys obviously has a very rich alumni base, and we marketed this project to the Pretoria Boys High base, so their staff, their students, as well as their old boys network. And within just over a week, an old boy phoned me, and within 5 minutes, he just basically said he'd buy the whole system, and he sent us 5 Bitcoin and bought the system using crypto. And it goes back to really, I'm just going to jump here, my first slide about the global solar cell buyers, and really Sun Exchange uses Bitcoin or cryptocurrency as a medium of exchange. So it allows anyone, anywhere in the world, to participate in the capital raise for this project. So it means if you are sitting in a coffee shop in London and you're about to fly to Spain on a holiday, and you're thinking, well, it's going to cost me, this many kilos of carbon to get to Spain. How can I offset my carbon footprint while making a return, while helping a school in South Africa go solar? Well, Sun Exchange offers a solution like that. So it basically means anyone in the world can buy a solar cell and assist in this funding effort. But it's also it's fantastic to see that old boys and others are keen to be involved in stuff like this. And I mean, it's also remarkable when someone is able to buy out pretty much a whole system like this, because the incentive is so clear, and the offering is just so good. So I'm not going to talk too much about Protea Heights Academy, because Danielle is going to touch on this. So Protea Heights is a project that we completed in 2019. I'm just going to get into a bit of the stats. So it was initially phase 1 was quite a small project, 34.17 kilowatt peak, looking to save them 20% of their bill over the 20 years. This is just a day in the life of Protea Heights solar system. So you'll see the yellow is the solar generation. You'll see how the external power, the grid power, dips when the solar power picks up. And then just to show you, over 11 months, the solar system at Protea Heights Academy has saved them 93,000 Rand. And that's 93,000 Rand with no risk to Protea Heights. So basically, all they did was sign some paper, and they've saved 93,000 Rand, which is really fantastic. So this is Protea Heights Academy phase 2. Danielle will also talk to this, I'm sure, but it just shows our journey. So initially we offered them a pure saving solution where we could give Protea Heights a solar system that saved them from day one. Protea Heights is a maths and science school with strong focus on science. They have robotics and all sorts of stuff. So they really need energy storage for this to keep their solar system running. If you have a battery component to a project, it necessitates that the solar component is bigger so that it allows it to charge the battery efficiently. So this is a crowd sale that's currently active, and I will urge anyone listening or anyone that listens in the future to go check it out and buy a solar cell in Protea Heights Academy. This is just another school we did, a pioneer school for the visually impaired. Sun Exchange is able to, through our donor base, raise donor funds for special schools, and it allows us to reduce the capex on these projects and offer an even more competitive tariff to special schools. Obviously, if you are a school for special learners, energy is critical because often the technology that you use for education uses energy. And thanks. I mean, that's for me. That's it, Tracy. I don't know how I'm doing for time here, but
right. Thank you so much, Misha. Thank you so much, Misha. There's 2 comments in the chat so long, just while Danielle, you get ready to present. The one is from Tabani Njozela, who says, afternoon, Misha, how does a private school qualify for this PPA arrangement? And does Sun Exchange have the capacity to serve schools in KZN? And lastly, why aren't universities being considered? And then there's another comment from Lolo, which looks like a business proposition. So, and he also says that he owns a solar cell. So I'll let you, if you could just address Tabani's question, and then we'll hand over to Danielle.
Sure. Nice, Tracy. So yes, we are active in KZN. I think we've done Westville School for girls, and we are developing a few more projects there. Why not universities? It's not for want of trying. We have approached universities. Universities have long tender processes, and we do often compete in these tender processes, but we often, well, now we don't actually do tenders because we have enough business coming through our doors that we don't need to go through long tender processes, which often just get pushed out another 6 months. So we do compete for university projects, and we are very keen to get into tertiary education, but often the tender processes often actually sometimes exclude PPAs. So universities have the capital for these projects and they have the technical expertise. So often they feel like they want to buy them. I personally think they should go the PPA route though. And how does a private school qualify? So you would just need to send me your bills, and I'll pop my email in the chat here. And we'd need to see what your minimum solar size is. So the minimum solar size now for a pure solar project is upwards of 100 kilowatt peak, maybe 80 kilowatt peak. But we would most likely do a battery integrated project, and there the minimum size is around 50 kilowatt peak of solar and 80 kilowatt hours of battery. And we really are struggling to make projects that are under 2 million capex work. So the capital component of the project needs to be sizable enough for us to be able to do it. Otherwise, the PPA that we offer is not as competitive as we want it to be for a school. So I hope that answers your question. And yeah, but I'll deal with you afterwards.
Cool. So I'm pleased now to hand over to Danielle. And Danielle, I'm hoping you're going to address this, but to kind of understand the unquantifiable effects of load shedding on the teaching project. Oftentimes people try to talk about savings in terms of kilowatt hours and the tariffs and so on, but the toll that load shedding has had on teachers, who I think are absolute heroes, by the way, to deal with load shedding in their classrooms and at home and on the roads. But I'm hoping you're going to enlighten us on how that you navigated that and your journey. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm first just going to give a little bit of background on the school itself. We are a fairly new school. We started.
Danielle, just check that you're not muted.
I'm not muted. Let me do that. Can you hear me now?
Danielle, it was working, but you're muted now.
Okay, there we
Okay,
go.
now we can hear you.
There we go. Okay, so I'm first just going to give a little bit of background on the school itself. So we are a fairly young school. We started in 2015. We opened our doors. We are a math science focused school. We have about 1,200 learners on the property itself. And we are a pilot school for coding and robotics, and now we're going to be a pilot school for drone soccer. All our learners have devices, so that means that they should have access to the Wi-Fi, and I'll expand a little bit on that later. But that does mean that we do require electricity throughout the day to provide our learners with our Wi-Fi, because we have such a large group of learners. Some of our learners come from areas where they don't necessarily have the money to provide data to be online. So we provide them with that Wi-Fi throughout the day. So we initially went solar as part of our sustainable development goals, or our targets and vision, or our target. And one of these reasons was climate leadership. So solar is a creative solution to one of the biggest challenges we are facing as not only humanity, but in our community and in our country. And by switching to solar, we knew that we would become a climate leader and wanted to encourage other schools and organizations to do the same. We also want to create a better tomorrow for our learners and show them what is possible. So we believe our learners should be critical thinkers, and part of this is looking not only at what our school is doing in their little space in the world, but also the global impact that they are having. That's why we run recycling programs, we plant trees, but solar energy was really one of the big things we wanted to look at, because it has a global impact, not just for us, but in the whole world. So the big thing we also looked at was the practical and financial reasons for us. So we realized that we had the option of going solar and saving energy on our bill without having a big capital outlay or insurance or maintenance or anything like that. So considering the past and future Eskom tariff increases, we knew that we would be going solar, and we could start saving money immediately, and we'd continue to do so in the long run, as Mishka explained. We also knew we could plow these savings back into the school rather than spending it on overheads like electricity. As you can imagine, the electricity for a school and the water bill for a school is fairly large, especially for a school of our size, and this made a huge impact to our financials and our budgeting for the year. It also created an opportunity, or a learning opportunity, for our learners. They are tomorrow's leaders. We need young people who appreciate the severity of the climate crisis and feel like they have the agency to make a difference. And by switching to solar, we wanted to create an opportunity for learners to see what is possible when people come together for a common cause. And not only that, but learn about solar energy, renewable energy, and climate change mitigation. So as I said before, we are a paperless school, so we work predominantly on Google Classroom. We try to print as little as possible, so all our learners have devices. They are always on the Wi-Fi, and we also have coding and robotics. So a big part for us as well was being able to run that pilot and have the electricity on at all times, because as you said before, it does make a massive impact on our teaching time. I use, in my classroom specifically, I do a lot of gamified education. My kids don't necessarily get all their notes and all the activities on paper, because I load everything onto the Google Classroom, because we want to decrease our impact that we are having on the environment and on the global crisis that we are facing. And also a big thing for us was for the school to leave a legacy, and for our learners to leave a legacy, and to think critically about how they are impacting the environment around them. So we did our first phase in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, and we sold 7,344 cells, and the energy we have generated is much greater than we initially forecasted. And we Sun Exchange itself owns 119 of those cells, and we have seen massive costs in our electricity bill. I think it was mentioned earlier about 93,000 Rand, which has a very big impact for our school in terms of our budget, because we want to spend that money elsewhere. We want to spend it to develop our learners, to take them on excursions, to be able to give them more than what the curriculum requires. Currently, we are busy with our phase 2 of the project. So we've got a 55 kilowatt solar plant that we're putting in, and then we've got an 80 kilowatt hour storage unit that we're putting in as well. So there's a little bit over 14,000 cells in this new phase. We use some of our own money. Through the crowd sale, we purchased as a school 80,000 rands worth of cells, which we could obviously do because we were saving on the electricity that we were getting from Eskom. And that means that equates to about 236 solar cells. So we are currently, I think, at about 31%. So we need to get to 40% in order for us to be completely off the grid. So that is the ultimate goal, is to not be impacted by load shedding at all, so that we can continue to teach throughout the day, that our learners have access to Wi-Fi, and that they have access to all the platforms that we are using to enhance their learning experience. So one of the reasons that is part of why we extended the solar plant that we have, and why we use Sun Exchange for solar crowd sales. So one of them is obviously the financial impact. For us, having a product where we can not purchase it ourselves and take on a massive loan from the bank. So crowd sale works very, very well for us. And we liked that we had to use none of our own capital, and we did not have to take any massive financial risks. The other benefit was that Sun Exchange would take care of everything. They have been absolutely amazing. All we needed to handle internally was the deliberations with the governing body, who, because of the type of school we are, they bought in immediately to this idea. And of course, the decrease in our electricity bill is quite significant, and that had a large impact on the decision. The third aspect that appealed to us was that we could ourselves buy into the solar project and own our own solar cells. Unfortunately, the crowd sale for the first phase sold out quite quickly, so very few of us actually got to buy any of those solar cells. But now with the second set, it is allowing for our learners to purchase, our community to purchase, and obviously with Sun Exchange, it is an international project. So you can have people from other countries purchase your cells, which is quite a lovely idea for a learner from Cape Town to think about the fact that someone in England might own cells in the same project that you have, and I'll chat about that a little bit in a minute. But the reason why we went over to the second phase was we wanted to be off the grid, but at the moment with the first phase we had a different principal and a different governing body, and now we have a new principal, and we obviously have a new cohort of learners that have come through, and we want them to also be able to buy into the project and also purchase cells as well. And with the new battery solution, going off the grid just makes it so much sweeter. As a school, we would highly recommend Sun Exchange. They are truly amazing. Our first solar crowd sale solar went very, very quickly, and it started generating electricity immediately. And Sun Exchange managed every part of the process. They have the crowd sale platform, they did the marketing, they dealt with the installation, they also assisted us with the documentation required for government approval, because that is quite a big part, especially because you don't just need the WCD to sign off on it, but you also need the City of Cape Town to sign off on it. There's inspections that need to happen, and Sun Exchange managed all of that for us, and that is quite wonderful, especially for those of us who don't really know much about all of those processes. And then the other portion of it is that hundreds of people from different countries bought into our first solar project. We even had a learner, as I said before, we had a learner from England who purchased cells in our school, and BBC even did a documentary on it, and our learners got to take part in that documentary. So the impact that it has on our learners above and beyond not experiencing load shedding or the learning from the experience, but they also get to involved and get to know students from abroad, which was quite wonderful for us. And what a big thing that played into it for us as well is that we love the people around the world who care about the climate, about climate change and our planet, are now part of our school community. So we're not just 1,200 learners and our parents and our staff, but it's more an international experience for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danielle. It's great to sort of hear from somebody who's actually experienced the product. And I must say, I'm a bit taken aback that the idea of being a climate leader was such a strong motivation. And it's so, like, I almost want to cry. It's heartening that it wasn't just about saving money. It wasn't just about taking the load of teachers. It was actually about wanting to be a climate leader. So that is absolutely brilliant. So we've had a question in the chat, which Misha has already answered. And there was a second, and I think maybe you could just speak to that, Misha. I have a question, and then I'm going to also open the floor for any additional questions. So what does the market for this actually look like? I mean, are there any other companies offering what Sun Exchange does, or something similar to it? And then secondly, it is about, there is a trend also that schools are struggling more and more to get their fees. The fee exemption requests go up every single year. How do you deal with a school who's not even getting school fees, who will not necessarily have the funds available to pay for this? So those are my two questions. And then if there are any other questions coming from the floor, please raise your hand or put it in the chat and we can address that.
Cool, fantastic. So Tracy, thanks for that, and thanks Danielle. That was a fantastic presentation or discussion about how Sun Exchange has helped. It really warms my heart as well. The project in 2019 was before my time at Sun Exchange, so it's really it's marvelous to hear. So just to the two questions in the chat, Spencer asked about schools in KZN. Would you consider adding batteries facility to the system you have installed? Yes, most certainly. As you've seen in Protea Heights, we are doing just that. So we are rolling out phase 2 on projects now. And then P. Mahlangu had a number of questions. How are you planning to work with schools that are no fee-paying schools? How are we going to work with SMEs and townships? How are you going to address the issues of schools struggling with funds? And what can you do to help people who want to be trained as installers but maybe don't have the background, maybe don't have matrics or something like that? So Sun Exchange is definitely not your normal solar company. So we're able to access donor and other funding to assist organizations, schools to go solar if they don't have the funds. So we partnered with ABSA, who bank a number of thousands of schools across the country. And one of the schools, the Bizweni School in Somerset West, wanted a solar system. And ABSA were able to come in, I think I mentioned it before, and essentially buy all the cells of the project and donate them to the school. So by using our donor base, we have other corporate donors who also come in depending on various parameters, size of projects, impact, stuff like that. We're able to reduce the capex for projects that can't necessarily afford, to even afford the PPA. You mentioned non-paying, fee-paying schools, and that's another component where there are a lot of schools in South Africa where the school themselves, they don't pay their bills. The provincial department or municipal department of education, they pay the bills on behalf of the school. Now, how does a company like Sun Exchange or any other company who's providing these PPAs interface with the provincial department to then negotiate these things? So that's something that has to be teased out a lot, and it's a very good point. And then with regards to how we will partner with SMEs and townships, look, we have an onboarding process, and anyone who can get through our onboarding process so that we're ensured that these companies can install compliant solar systems, we're happy to work with. And Ready Sun Exchange, we want to work with a diverse range of EPCs. That's engineering, procurement, and construction. These are the engineering partners that we basically partner with. They buy the actual hardware and install it on site, and basically the crowd sale raises the funds for us to pay the EPC to do this. So we work with a diverse range of EPCs across South Africa. And then if you wanted to become a solar installer, Sun Exchange, we don't actually have any solar installers in-house. We're a developer and a funding house, and we partner with these engineering companies. But we could certainly point you in the right direction. And there are a lot of technical institutions now and others offering certificates and that, so that people are able to access the opportunities that are in the renewable energy sector, which is exploding in South Africa. It's a green rush, maybe not a gold rush at this moment in time. Tracy, to answer your points. So what does the market look like? So to my knowledge, there is no real market competitor to Sun Exchange when it comes to the crowdfunding of solar projects. So there are companies that have tried to do this. I know the Fed Group had a similar kind of solution, and internationally there are some others. But Sun Exchange is specifically project-based, and it's specific to the fact that you buy an individual solar cell, which then becomes your asset, which then earns you a revenue. And really what it allows us to do, specifically in the case of schools, and I look back at an example we did, South Peninsula High School in Cape Town, we were able to leverage capital for that school from the crowd at a 9% IRR, internal rate of return. Which is far below what a bank or private equity provider is going to give you. So it means we're able to access capital at a cheaper rate, which gives the school a more competitive offer, which is really one of the beauties of Sun Exchange. Another massive advantage is that if you have a crowd of people investing in a project, and a school stops paying their bills or can't pay their full bill, the crowd has taken on that risk. And we do comprehensive due diligence on projects. And it goes back to the previous point about how do you fund schools that won't necessarily pass a due diligence exercise because they just aren't, that financially solvent, or they don't have the capital on hand to say that, yes, we can pay for this PPA, we can afford this battery lease rate. And for there, it does become tricky. But Sun Exchange would love to solar power every school in the country if we could, but we also can't risk bankrupting ourselves and bankrupting our investors or our cell owners. So it is a balance. It's something that we've got to tease out. We do make all the DD information available to anyone who wants to buy a solar cell. So there's a project information document that comes out, but mostly we have a very strict DD process. And schools that make it through that process are schools that we can see are well managed and well run. And so we have schools, where the fee payment rate has sometimes dropped, below 20%. For instance, the school I'm working with now in Springs, but because they're well managed, they understand their situation, they've been able to, maintain financial integrity, and we're able to, essentially they're bankable, and Sun Exchange can offer them a solution.
We have had a couple more. A question in the chat from Non-Tobacco, also about schools without significant technological resources, but also a low energy capex. Who services them? And then a question from David Caldwell: what kind of profit does Sun Exchange make per annum?
So, with regards to the question about Mr. Buthelezi, the question about capex, so it's a very good question. Does Sun Exchange have a minimum project size? And I think I mentioned this before. Yes, we do. So it does mean that there's only a certain size of school that qualifies to become a Sun Exchange off-taker, and that's simply because if a small school wanted to use the Sun Exchange platform and wanted us to develop the project and maintain it for that amount of time, that costs us an amount of money. And if the school, the amount of power that the school needs is below a certain amount, it means that the actual price for energy that we need to charge the school becomes uncompetitive. And it basically it means the deals, financials fall apart, and it doesn't make sense. So we kind of have a minimum capex amount now of around 2 million. And schools that fall under that, we look at them on a context-specific basis. So sometimes we're able to, if the school has a hostel and needs, comprehensive load shedding protection at night, maybe for 4 to 6 hours, then the battery component that's required, which is a large driver of the capex in these projects, can sometimes get the project to a point where it can stand on its own legs. If it's a project that's like a special story or something like that, we can then take that to our donor base and see if we can make that work. But for very small projects, which specifically talks to small rural schools, it becomes very difficult for the Sun Exchange model as it currently stands to work there. And that's where you would need regulators to step in and others to say, look, is there a way where we can make PPAs available to small schools? Because in my opinion, I don't think you should have thousands of schools in South Africa trying to buy their own solar system. It makes a lot of sense to go for the PPA route, and potentially there's a way of the department ring fencing. These are 10 rural schools in this area. We'll provide this much subsidy to those schools so that they can access PPAs at competitive rates. David, to your question, what kind of profit does Sun Exchange make per annum? I can't actually answer that. I haven't actually seen the financial statements, but they make enough to pay my salary, so I'm happy. Sun Exchange is not a listed company. It's a private company. Often we get confused as an NPO. We aren't an NPO, but we are extremely socially conscious, and our mission is very much driven by the fact that we are like-minded individuals who really want to make a difference.
All right, I think there were people with their hands up. There's a question about the sustainability of the solar cells, but while you think about that, Mish, I just would like Pima Shlangu, if you're still with us, and Lolo, if you would like to just speak and say your question. I don't know if it's Mr. or Ms. Mhlangu, you did have questions before, which we answered, but if you have something more, this is your time. This is your moment.
All right, thank you, Tracy.
Can you hear me? Good day.
Or not.
Can
Lolo?
you hear me?
Oh, no, I see. Sorry. Mr. Ms. Mhlangu, I see that you're speaking, but you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Can you hear me? Because I want to
We're
be sure
unfortunately not being able to hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Great.
Oh, I'm sorry, good day, and thanks for the invite. One, I want to make a follow-up question because some of the answers I didn't hear well. The issue of my question, that was number 4. The issue of people who want to be trained, and the issue number 2 of SMMEs that want to be accredited, because I can understand that it's an issue of exchange. And also we want to put it in your attention that as a member of a school governing bodies representing schools, SGPs around the province, and I'm also acting as a deputy president currently in an association representing SGPs around the country. So it's a good initiative that you are bringing. But $1 million question is, how best are you going to work with all of us here in an exchange and so forth? And is not this program or project is not going to leave our schools with a serious debt when it comes to, because I hear in one of the presentations we're speaking about loan from the banks and so forth and so forth. And in our understanding, the school governing bodies are not allowed to go for loans with any institution. So my question would be that they're not going to give our schools a serious debt that they won't be able to manage their co-facilities on finances. I thank you.
Mishka, we can't hear you.
Okay. Sorry, guys. How's that? Okay, thanks, Tracy. Thank goodness I'm in the office. You just need to. Sorry about that. Am I audible now? Fantastic. So, Sun Exchange. So to go back to the question, I'm sure you haven't heard anything, so I'll start from square one. Sun Exchange works with EPCs across the country. EPCs are engineering partners that provide the procurement specialty, so they're able to buy hardware, they're able to engineer projects, and they're able to install them. That's the construction part. And we have our own in-house engineering teams that vets our partners that we work with. So any company that wants to become a Sun Exchange installer needs to go through our onboarding process. So we work with a diversified group of EPCs across South Africa because we want to service, all areas in South Africa. So if a company wants to work with Sun Exchange, they just need to make it through our onboarding process. So we basically need to ensure that the company that we work with is able to meet our standards. And because we build projects that last for 20 years, we only use tier 1 products, so basically the top quality hardware, and we work with companies traditionally that have the expertise to do this. Nowadays, because of the explosion of solar energy in South Africa, many people are just jumping on the bandwagon, but to install a solar system correctly is actually not such an easy thing, and that's why people have to be onboarded. So we're happy to work with EPCs that can, work with us and work to our standards. Then to your last point, which was about people wanting to be involved in becoming accredited installers. So because we're not installers ourselves, we can't necessarily talk to that. But there are avenues. There are a lot of technical institutions and courses being offered. And probably funding being offered for people to go through these things. I can't personally speak on that, but I definitely think there's Saratech down in Cape Town, the South African Renewable Energy Technology Center, and a few others. Which if you Google, you link to, you should be able to find an affiliate office or something, someone similar offering something like that in an urban center near to where you are, or potentially even a rural center. I'm not sure. And then I think there was a question about the debt, which is a very good question. So Sun Exchange, as a PPA provider, you don't take on any debt. So you're not taking a loan out. So what Sun Exchange does is we charge you for the energy that you consume. So there is no borrowing, and we recoup the revenue over the 20-year period. But you aren't taking out a loan. There's no loan that sits on your book. So we're not indebting schools or other institutions. We do a due diligence exercise to make sure that the institution that we're solar powering, on their books, it appears that yes, they are able to pay their bills. And because we're crowdfunding these projects, we have to make sure that these people are able to pay their bills. So our due diligence process is pretty strict, so that we work with institutions that are able to pay the power purchase agreement over the life of the project. Otherwise, it hurts the return of our cell owners. Not good.
Okay. Okay, everyone. I think that we are drawing to the end of our time together. So in summary, an incredible solution, not a solution for everything. And there are always trade-offs. The money that is going to the investors in the solar panels is now obviously not going to Eskom or City Power, so there's always a trade-off. But certainly a solution around being offered around a difficult problem. I really just want to thank everyone who participated today. Particularly, I'm so pleased that somebody from the Governing Body Foundation is here. I really am pleased about that. And I'm hoping that you will also spread the word to the other branches of the Governing Body Foundation, because we really want to get the word out that all is not lost. There is hope. There are young climate leaders out there really making a different kind of world. And so thank you so much to Misha. You're on your way to Cape Town tomorrow. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. It was amazing. And thank you also to Danielle for sharing Protea Academy's journey. And with that, I'm going to close it. And then just to say that we have our next seminar next week is turning to municipalities. And we have two people from City of Cape Town and from George Municipality who are going to speak about the process that they've encountered to try and get independent power producers. It's going to be a really interesting seminar. So I look forward to that one as well. And enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thank you.